Welcome to the Connected Campus podcast, where we explore the ways that diverse professionals are working every day to optimize their efforts to recruit, retain, and graduate their students.
We are here with another awesome episode in our ongoing series talking with higher ed IT leaders, folks at the front lines. We're talking with them to explore sort of their backgrounds, their stories, what they do, how they do it, why they do it, and so much more. So really been enjoying these conversations. I feel like we've had the luxury of having a lot of unique, different people with, different sort of pedigrees and experiences and different things like that. So we're going to get into that with our guest. Start as we always do. Patty, if you want to introduce yourself, your professional background briefly, then we'll kind of dig into a couple of pieces of your work as we go on here.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dustin, for having me. Hello, everyone. My name is Patty Patria. I'm the Chief Information Officer at Babson College. This is my third stint as a CIO in higher education, and I've worked in the higher ed realm for about 20 years, and I'm really passionate about helping organizations transform business with technology.
Yeah, and I know, I always try to just look through people's LinkedIn or any kind of just stuff from, I guess I would say maybe just the front page of Google, different things that, awards or, other news stories or something. I know for your background, something that just so far I thought was sort of noticeable and noteworthy. You have an MBA and you're a certified PMP, project management professional. Because I think, the presumption would be a lot of people who are at your level of a CIO likely have some sort of computer science degree or super technical background. But I think you're taking sort of a different route, which I think does also make pretty clear sense once you kind of, think about it for a few moments. But just in your own words, how have those two credentials, the MBA and the PMP, sort of served you in your career?
Absolutely. So both my MBA and my PMP, along with my security certification and my change management certifications, have been extremely helpful throughout my career. Being a CIO today is more about understanding the business, managing relationships and projects, and helping to communicate the value of how technology and business processes can help the business. And so the MBA was actually critical in understanding all different aspects of business, from management to marketing to finance to HR. The PMP comes in extremely handy because we deliver more than 100 projects a year within my IT and library organization, and making sure you have your pulse on the critical projects and you can see when things are going off the rails and you know how to pull them back in is really helpful. In addition to those, though, I think my security certification as well as the change management certifications have been really important. Security helps you look at things through a risk lens, which again is very important to communicate risk to the organization. And change management, when you're doing digital transformation, there's change happening all the time, and you have to understand the change curve and how people react to the curve and what's normal during the change curve and what's not. And so I think all of those things combined together have really helped me tremendously throughout my career.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely in a variety of different ways with the people with different backgrounds, kind of ending up at that same point. Like the higher IT leaders we're talking to are just really reinforcing that point of the change management, working with people, and kind of project management have been really crucial skills. And whether it is the CIO, they could also be leveraging somebody in sort of an operations role to sort of, if they're going to be I'm going to be more articulating the vision, sort of pointing us in the right direction, and whether it is themselves or somebody else. Yeah, it seems super important to have somebody who's, doing those sort of things. And I think, have you found that, and I guess maybe being at somewhere like Babson is maybe a little bit more sort of culturally apt to be inclusive of those sort of backgrounds and stuff. Have you felt maybe just in sort of you go out to a conference, you're talking shop with people, having an MBA and a PMP, do you feel like that's becoming more normal, I guess? Or because I guess, and it's just me, I'm just noticing with the people that I've looked at and talked to and researching and everything, it's just noticeable to me. But I don't know if I'm just sort of the naive layman here. I don't know sort of the trend lines of folks like yourself.
No, I think it's becoming more of a trend. And I think probably 20 years ago, many of the CIOs might have come up through more of a technical engineering, networking side of the house role. Today, It's all about the communications. It's about software. It's, people are moving to the cloud continually. And if you don't actually have the soft skills to be able to, one, communicate effectively with leadership, and two, the managerial skills to make sure you have a high performing team, and you know how to build high performing teams, I think it does not set you up well these days. So I think there is more of an emphasis on the ability to understand the business, communicate the business, have all those critical soft skills, work with people, understand change, because that's literally what we're doing all the time now as CIOs. Dustin, I can't hear you. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, there's a little bit background
Oh,
noise. Sorry. Um, yeah, it's kind of the idea of, you know, I would say in the olden days, or certainly like still happens today, is that like, hey, you're a really good person on the front lines. We're going to make you a manager and keep like bumping you up. And that has some value. Like, you know what the work is that people are doing. But I think trying to like not just sort of lean on that too much and get other skill sets in the mix where like, yeah, does the CIO need to have a super deep, sort of knowledge base of, kind of the technical piece? It's like they need to be able to appreciate it and understand it and have at least a sort of like a aptitude towards sort of, appreciating that work. Because yeah, if they were like sort of putting out mandates and it's like, you don't actually know what you're telling us to do or something, so it's like, yeah, trying to bring in kind of the best of both worlds of like project management, change management, working with people, and that technical piece for sure. So yeah, I mean, it's just great, like, on one hand getting a variety of diverse perspectives and backgrounds and all that, but then it's just like, it is, if a pattern develops, like a trend line develops, like that's how, where it's like, hey, a lot of people are coming from, they got a degree in biology and now they're a CIO, so they, kind of bring that perspective, but they're ending up in the same place of just sort of understanding like how to, the context of change, what impacts, cause and effect or whatever. So yeah, it's been really interesting. And like I said, I mean, you're in, your CIO in a unique environment of Babson, which has a huge emphasis on entrepreneurship. And I'm just curious, like, if you can talk more, I guess, just sort of like high level, like the institution, what it's about, and then just sort of like how your role you felt like has fit in that unique environment.
sure, absolutely. So Babson is the number one school for entrepreneurship and business for, I think, 27 years in a row. It's a fantastic, exciting place to work. Working with both faculty and staff that have this entrepreneurial focus actually makes my job much more interesting and fun. Many higher education institutions, you see resistance to change quite a bit. But at Babson, if you can explain the value of the new ideas and how it will benefit the individuals or the institution, most people are willing to try things. And so, as an example, I'll share this fall, 2 3 weeks before school started, we had 12 or so faculty that were interested in piloting generative AI in their courses with students. And so, 2 3 weeks before school, my team and myself were looking at various options, and we settled on OpenAI and Dolly with a subscription service for our students. And then after we shared that we have a plan in place, we put a test plan together for the faculty to test, we had an additional 20 or so faculty that wanted to get on board. And I think by the start of school, we had 30 faculty and 300 students actively leveraging OpenAI and Dolly in coursework this fall. And we did that in the matter of a couple weeks. Other institutions, you wouldn't be able to do that type of thing so quickly, but it's exciting. Our students have a better experience because they're leveraging tools in the classroom that they're going to leverage when they get out into the workforce. And there's more of a mindset of let's try it. If we fail, we fail. We'll try something different. And I think many places are afraid to fail fast, but I think at Babson, it's okay to try something. If you fail fast, let's pivot. We'll try something else.
Yeah, and I guess just the point you're making that I feel like is very uh, important to call out is that maybe like faculty and staff and those professional folks are maybe bringing up things or just way more apt to do pilots and that sort of things. I think that's typically the hurdle where they're just trying to kind of juggle things going on and appreciate, I guess, a level of kind of consistency and stuff. And you might at other institutions just see more so where like students have all the ideas. They're just sort of like, we should do all these things. And it's just sort of like, all right, we have to figure out what we can kind of pitch and make work or whatever. But just like, yeah, having a culture and an environment that is just, on all the fronts, just very open to, trying out things, and especially AI was like a great example. Can you think of any anecdotes, I guess, of like stuff coming up from students, I guess, because I guess like that would be really interesting to me, of just sort of like that environment where they know if they are bringing up ideas, and maybe they were ones that were kind of helping to push like AI, but just like knowing like you would be more likely to bring up different ideas if you just feel like the audience is even like receptive to begin with. Like other schools, it might be like, oh, we're not really gonna like even bother trying to like bring it up to the higher ups. They might not even care to listen or do anything about it. So I guess just any sort of further details about sort of the dynamics of like the back and forth, I guess, of how you see maybe like the student demand for digital tools, and how that balances with like faculty and staff.
Sure. So, student demand for digital tools, we meet with our student government association generally annually to get their feedback, share updates in technology. And they're actually very interested in the technology updates, and they provide feedback. I think the biggest difference between, say, students and faculty and staff is our communication mediums. Faculty, staff, the employees read email every day. That's what we do. It's how we communicate. Students don't read them at all, and so we're looking to find new avenues or channels, be it social media, texting. We actually just rolled out this fall a new opt-in texting policy, so we can start to text students relevant information, because again, they don't read email, and so we're trying to reach them on the mediums. And we are looking to do more holistic sort of portals and access and things that are easy for them to use. We rolled out a chat bot in the library for students, because again, if you know the demographics, most 18 to 22-year-olds don't want to pick up a phone and they don't want to email. So what are your options? It's social or chat. So we've got a new chat bot rolled out as well to try to communicate on their medium.
Yeah, and I mean, just trying to figure out like, place like a library. It's like, yeah, that's probably gonna be like your even if like you're on the third floor of the library, some campuses like, oh, I want to go all the way downstairs to like the help desk or whatever to like ask, a question or something. You just do the chat bot, or you're doing it in your residence hall room, or certainly if you're a commuter or off campus or whatever. Like, it is always that thing. And I love chatbots, like where those kind of rudimentary questions that get asked all the time, if it's automated, it can answer them readily. Or even if there's a staff person sort of live engaging with them, they can answer those questions remotely and be like, oh, well, that's something actually, you might need to come in for, or you should go over here, or things like that. It's just trying to, like simplify sort of the fact finding, or sort of, those sort of things for students. And certainly, I mean, like what Pathify does around with like portals and different things like that, it is just seeing like there isn't even necessarily, depending on the campus and the culture and the students they serve and all that, like, one only best way. It is that idea, like, well, maybe like the library, if it's like we don't have anything on campus, maybe that's the best place to start. They kind of are like, more in need of addressing those like FAQs or, different things like that. But yeah, I mean, it definitely has to be sort of a multimodal approach, getting like, the texting ability, because it's like, well, certain things would be really well suited for that. Especially if it's just sort of a like, hey, FYI, here's the thing going on, versus like it being like a thing somebody needs to like take action on, or it could be like, hey, go check your portal or check your email or whatever. So, I mean, yeah, and that kind of segues, I guess, of just any sort of perspectives you have on sort of like the digital transformation playing out on your campus. I mean, we ask pretty much every guest about this as sort of a broad question, because it sounds like, just like the texting program and, chatbots and things like that, just any other sort of like projects that maybe are like ongoing, what you're sort of looking at and keeping an eye on, anything that comes to mind. Certainly, I guess AI, you're already sort of waist deep in as well. So anything else, I guess, that you can sort of just give a snapshot of at this moment in time.
Sure. So, since I arrived at Babson, which was about a year ago, we've been working on digital transformation in various flavors. The initial focus was actually on transforming infrastructure and security posture, as Babson was a little behind on those areas. And if you don't have infrastructure, your foundation in place, it's hard to do everything else. So in the last year, we've streamlined technology by moving our applications and services to the cloud. We had a lot of stuff on-prem, and so we're making that cloud migration. We deployed the Office 365 suite for all of our faculty, staff, and students. We were on multiple systems before, so we wanted one system where they could all collaborate together. We've deployed cloud-based voice over IP telephony technology. We've deployed a new knowledge base for self-service. We didn't have that in the past. So the goal is cloud-based, easy access, make things simpler. And we've also been working on redundant infrastructure in key areas. So fast forward to this year, now that we've got our infrastructure mostly in place, we're focusing on streamlining the digital experience of our students, employees, and our alumni. We've engaged in some business process improvement projects with our cloud-based ERP system, and we're looking at how we can streamline the student experience and the employee experience in certain areas because they're not as good as we'd like them to be. We're also this year partnering with Salesforce. We're going to be an early adopter for their education cloud environment. And Salesforce in higher education is really the best CRM tool for engagement. But traditionally, you've had multiple orgs of Salesforce where different people are in different orgs. It's difficult to share information easily. And so we're going to be an early adopter, pull all of our environments into one, including our alumni, and really transform the user experience for our alumni, trying to give them the Marriott and Amazon-like experience that everybody is used to these days. So we're really excited about that. That's going to take about a year. And next year at this time, we should be able to see the fruits of all of those labors.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to have you back to talk more about that because I mean, like I in previous roles have used Salesforce and love it as a platform, and just even like that, there'll be kind of like a cultural shift where like institutions and their partners, it's like, hey, we're actually like working on the same system, so we could talk shop on that. But yeah, and I mean, and just the idea that like so holistically, the student experience and the alumni experience, like I've been involved in my University of Delaware Alumni Association over the past a little over a year, and just like I've started geeking out about that of just like, well, what tools do they use, like how do they track all this stuff and do whatever, so yeah, I mean, you need good tools across the board. And I think just even that idea, I mean, a lot of other folks are kind of saying the same thing. I don't know when the timing of it was, because it feels like it was like well suited for it, of like over the pandemic when campus was kind of emptied out, that's when like a lot of the like infrastructure stuff was kind of happening, or maybe like moved to the front of the line that was planned to be happening anyway. But yeah, it's like you have to kind of get everything behind the scenes, like you said, in a place, and then it's like what's sort of the front facing sort of user experience that we're overlaying on top of all the sort of kind of nuts and bolts on the inside. So yeah, I mean, these are absolutely just like the trend lines that we're seeing, which again, it's always just a good reassurance seeing that folks are all kind of grappling with similar stuff and, at different places and everything. And, yeah, and I think, just I guess another word that's sort of ringing in my head, like you're saying, of like kind of cohesion, where it's just like, oh, we could have like different instances for all these different, aspects of our campus. So if there's just like a lot of, more like kind of uniform infrastructure, uniform student experience where you can kind of manage it more easily. Because I think that's like, and maybe if you want to kind of speak briefly to this, that idea of like, the pandemic and certainly leading up to it, like there was just the kind of proliferation of all these different tools. And it's like, well, they're only as good as they, how they integrate with each other, work together. And if it is just sort of like, we'll have to keep like a dozen plates spinning in the air constantly, it's like, well, if we could just kind of like merge things and like what's just maybe the front facing versus like students interacting with multiple systems all at once. So like, I don't know, just that mindset, I guess, of just how you've kind of navigated where like having a lot of tools can be okay as long as they sort of integrate with one another. Like, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, so I completely agree with you. I would prefer less tools and have them much more integrated, or use same tools. In higher ed, you often hear the term cradle to grave, right? And so you want to capture your constituents from the point where before they're applicants, sometimes they're coming to summer camps when they're in middle school or high school on a college campus, through the student life cycle, through the alumni. And I think building one CRM system for that complete journey allows us, one, to collect better information on our constituents no matter where they are in the journey, but then also provide the relevant information back. One of the things we've actually been talking about lately is lifelong learning. And in lifelong learning, if you know what someone was interested as an applicant, as a student, as an alumnus, then you can tailor lifelong learning courses to them as an alumni. Things may be asynchronous learning that are short modules and micro credentials and things like that. So having comprehensive systems that have good data in them for data driven decision making, and having one experience all the way through that funnel, I think is really important for the constituents and for us to provide them better services.
Yeah, I mean, just even the simple premise of like you're kind of talking about a lot of the outcomes, but even just being able to like, you know, filter reports and sort of surface them where it's like, all right, show me, all the students that did X, Y, or Z. And it's like, then that can just like, even just like a tinge more personalization. Because I think it is just sometimes where it's like, send an email to all students, send an email to all alumni, send, like you could be like, well, how about all alumni that like studied this or did that or what, like you can start to get more granular because like the profiles are like more robust. Like you said, it's just like all in there and you can kind of, yeah, just the possibilities are endless. But yeah, I mean, and it is just, I think we've only really scratched the surface because I was like listening to a podcast the other day. It was about like alumni engagement and just, I guess by happenstance, we're spending a little bit of time here as well. But like that it was a notable institution and they were like, yeah, we don't have a CRM. Like, I know that'd probably be surprising, but like, we don't have one.
Wow.
And I was like, and this is like a pretty well-resourced institution, but it just is like, they've never had one. So they've operated without it and they probably don't even know what they're missing. So that like, that's what I think about is that like, we're in the midst of so much digital transformation where institutions are at, various levels of, navigating it with, moving to the cloud with, their infrastructure or, getting tools like a Salesforce or something in place. But, that we haven't even seen a lot of those outcomes. Cause I think that it's even the idea where it's like, yeah, you're going to turn the switch on, you're using Salesforce. It will still take some time. Like it'll take time to sort of like, you know, do things and see sort of the byproducts of them and have that sort of, inform future efforts and stuff. So that's just for me is I'm excited this work is happening and I'm, just as excited or even more so to see sort of like, the fruits of the labor, like you're saying, where it's just like, yeah, we know this is going to take a while to sort of, implement and, train people or, do data migrations and all these, other sort of things. But, yeah, just what people will be able to sort of imagine up and, be able to accomplish is going to be really exciting. So it's something else from your background and this, just another digital tool on higher ed that's sort of ascendant right now. You are on the higher ed advisory board for Workday. So I'm curious, just like what a position like that, how it came about, but like what a position like that, how it works, like what your experience has been. Just, I think like I haven't talked to as many people. I think I've seen it on people's profiles where there's like other stuff that we were talking about or whatever. I saw that. I was like, you know what? I haven't really talked about it with somebody before. I'm just kind of being in a position like that. That's obviously great to be able to bring that perspective to them. So just how does all that work?
Sure. So I'll start with the background. At my prior institution, I actually helped oversee the implementation of Workday from a finance and HR and a student perspective. It was a 4-year project. It was really challenging, but great and results at the end of the day. But as we were implementing student, we were again probably early adopters. We were maybe one of the first 10 or 15 institutions to go live with student. And when you were doing that, the product was great, but there was some areas that it didn't quite meet our needs. So we worked very closely with the Workday product people to provide feedback on how the product should be tailored for higher education and what works. And it was, again, a partnership on both sides. And so because I worked closely with them on the go live, and we had a very successful go live of our Workday student implementation, I was asked to be on their higher education advisory board, which I really enjoy. One of the things about advisory boards, whether it's Workday or Dell, or I'm going to be joining the Cisco one, is it gives you the opportunity to learn valuable information on relevant topics to your product. So, generally quarterly, we get invited to all the CIOs on the board get invited to participate in sessions, whether it's AI and what Workday is using with AI, or one of the things we learned about is the legal ramifications and or risk ramifications of AI and what's coming down the pike from a risk and legal perspective. You learn really great information, which you then can share back with your teams. It's also an opportunity to continue to drive change in the product, and the change makes our user experience better and Workday's experience better because they have happy customers that really like the product. Lastly, it's a great network of other CIOs on the board that you can discuss challenges with and solutions with. Some are in higher ed, some are not, and it's great to hear the different perspectives. Like when I listen to the CIO at Accenture, who manages 800,000 people, who's also on the advisory board, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of different challenges that I might have at my institution. So it's a really wonderful learning experience as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we are, I'm sure we'll tease it out here soon because I am helping to kind of reimagine advisory board for Pathify, and it is kind of like seeing that sort of potential of it that I have not personally been able to sort of like corral, and get folks together much yet. But that's what we hope for ourselves, for them, is that sort of give and take, and they can network with each other, and they benefit, the entire community benefits, and everything. So glad to know that's like just all these advisory boards out there are all having these amazing, awesome experiences. And because there's like definitely like a selfish component to it, like you said, is like, I'm benefiting, I'm getting all this great knowledge, but you can do it sort of in an effort to give back to the whole community. Like it's not so just like one way. But so that's great, and I appreciate you giving some of your time to all those boards that you've been a part of, and I'm sure will be a part of in the future.
Yeah.
But so we will wrap up with the final question that we absolutely always ask all of our guests. What does a connected campus look and or feel like to you?
Sure. A connected campus to me includes easy to use digital infrastructure that facilitates better collaboration between all stakeholders. It also relies on data analytics to help identify and to predict key metrics and to improve the overall student experience in higher ed. In addition to robust infrastructure, a connected campus should focus on engaging students through the correct mediums, which we talked about before, which could include social media or nudge technology or texting. And it should offer flexible learning for all constituents, from your traditional undergrad students through your lifelong learners. Lastly, I think a connected campus should continually innovate. The world is changing rapidly, and I think higher ed needs to keep up with the demands that we are seeing in the world at large.
Very well said. And I think I like that, like, our conversation has felt very like comprehensive, like we're talking about alumni stuff and just, student experience, and, incorporating faculty and staff and everything. So it's, like it is, when you think of a campus, it's all the bits and pieces and people and all that together. So good to kind of honor that and work in an intentional way that, kind of reflects that commitment. And then, I feel like your answer sort of speaking to sort of, learning experiences and all these sort of things, like, and the technology that helps students on sort of a micro level of like a nudge, a reminder, versus just like the learning environment, just as a sort of like broad concept and everything. It's like, it's all the above. It's all those things. So,
Yes.
great. Yes. Stuff to be mindful of and just sort of, sit with as folks depart this episode. Thank you so much for hanging out, for sharing all that you did. We'll have, your LinkedIn for folks to connect with you if they so choose, and keep the conversation going. But just appreciate you so much, and giving a little bit of your time here.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was a pleasure chatting with you today. So thanks again.
Thanks for listening to The Connected Campus. Please leave a 5-star review for the show and share it so others can discover us. Make sure to also subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode of The Connected Campus.